Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode and the first episode for 2022. And really, I can say that the concept for today, could the purpose of life be marching into the unknown? It's pretty much I've decided to share an episode on my fascination of where the species is going to go and what are some events that could take place, you know. And so I thought I'd talk about that a little. So, to dive into it, could the purpose of life be marching into the unknown? See, this is a sentence that can be seen in two ways. First thing about the purpose of life, I would say, is that we got to look at what life is, and life is found in the dimensions of time and the dimension of space. That means it's literally like a character in a physical story. And then this character in the physical story is experiencing the change of its environment and establishing identity in accordance to what it accumulates through that change. So, what I'm trying to say is that when we wonder about the purpose of life, we got to consider the notion of time. When you look at time in a very simple fashion, just we categorize it into past, present, future. Okay, to continue. Pretty much, I'm that person putting an equal sign between the purpose of life and the act of marching into the unknown. I feel that our species has been bound by language. And what language is that if you look at it from the past, it was a great advancement, equivalent to an inner technological advancement for the species, right? If you look at it at the present, it's an outlet of, let's say it's so from the past, it's a great achievement. From the present, it's an opportunity to be utilized. And then when we look at it from the future, there comes this notion of, okay, this story of the world that we're all living in, what will happen to it in some sense if we go beyond the dualism? I've made a note of it here. If we go beyond the dualism of, if we go beyond dualism, what I mean by that is that, um, okay, let's say it like this. The purpose of life, there's a past view, present view, and future view. When we wonder about the past, what are we actually looking at? We're looking at memory. That's pretty much our past. That means if you ask who are people, they're like storehouses of memory. Do you know? They're just images or views they have accumulated, right? Isn't that fascinating? We're not just made, like if the body is made of atoms, the mind is made of what I, in one of my talks, called eventums. It's made by events, right? And in various events, there's different senses of self. So think about how many ways you, whoever you are listening to me, have existed so far in this life. How many days you've just opened your eyes, logged into the conscious waking state, and have been something to yourself. Like it's actually fascinating. We're not just simple people, that could be branded as good or bad. We are an incredible multidimensional spiral of a sort of experiential tunneling through time and space. Right? We are way more advanced than the story that we're entertaining now as human beings. But anyways, if you look at the title from the present, let's say, could the purpose of life be marching into the unknown? Or let's say future first. Could the purpose of life be marching into the unknown? Uh, That means it's as if what somebody says, what's the meaning of life? And it's as if, all right, we got to just go and respond to the unknown. After in this life, in the conscious waking state, we have acknowledged known variables of reality. The only thing left is that the mind moves towards the unknown. And the unknown means where memory has not reached yet. As if you look at this creature from not having one life, when the child is born, it's as if when the child looks in the mirror and notices itself, that's when a subjective life begins. Okay, an inner life begins. And this inner life begins having a difference to the outer life, and that's where emotions are coming from. If somebody was like, hey, Mr. Within, can you, from a mystical context, explain emotions really quickly? I'll say it's literally like a light going through two lenses. Now, when you move one lens, and it's as if imagine the body was a lens, physical reality, matter, and then imagine now the mind is a lens, and the soul is just this beam of attention, just this witnessing presence. It's as if energy and attention are the static in regards to everything else that changes, right? That means one of the hardest things to do on this planet is to conceive the idea of energy. I am telling you, that is one of the most fascinating and complex things. But anyways, that takes the discussion somewhere else. So pretty much the point was there's two ways you can see the title. Okay. Um, at least the way I'm considering it. Now, I have another page of notes which I need to simultaneously go into. So the thing is, when a human being talks about something, right, they can start from the past, come to the present, right? They could start from the present, go to the past, and once those two dimensions and their relationships have been covered, eventually the psychology of the human being begins having a relationship with the future. Many people wonder what the sociologist Maslow in his hierarchy meant by the concept of self-actualization. As if in this life, when you look at creatures, they go through a realm of, it's like physiological survival games, right? So you survive as a physical entity, and then after you have survived as a physical entity, you start surviving as a psychological entity. Now, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he saw that what is in some sense the summit, the mountain summit of this sort of surviving for reality. Where does it lead? It leads to a point of self-actualization. And self actualization is another way of saying you come to the present and you realize a greater value system than just having known combinations and patterns fit or become aligned with one another, is actually beginning to realize that there is a strange wilderness and the sort of abyss that awaits man. So what I mean by this is that when you come to the notion of when you move beyond psychological survival, you come to the present moment, and only from there, the only thing left in this reality is no longer past games or playing, let's say, or game present past games. Do you know? Or it would, in some sense, be just a relationship with your future self, with the future self, which is your whole species. So there's levels to this notion of the future self. On this piece of paper in my hand, I've written the future of civilization is information storage management. So this is something that I feel uh, like there will come a transformation in human psychologies. I will say from 2022 right now, I would say maybe in the next 100, 200 years, one of the most unique evolutionary psychological shifts on the surface of this planet will happen. What does that mean? That means not only is technology introducing new variables or unknown variables to the past of culture, but it is in some sense the human mind is discovering the giant wealth of internal abilities and visions and worlds it can access. So I don't know how to tell you this, but it's as if our inner lives we haven't put a lot of thought on, thought into in some sense because we've just treated it like a mask. Okay, The notion of the self from Jungian thought, the persona, one of the main archetypes, is a mask. So how fascinating is this? That it's as if like our physical reality is masking the potential of our inner dimensions, and our inner dimensions, because they have not activated, are masking the true potential of our physical reality. So what it is, it's as if we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. There's a sort of endlessness, and I'll come back to this information storage management thing later, but I'll go back to how I said the purpose of life is seen through, let's say, time and space. And then in time is past, present, future. I have also written a trio for the concept of space. Now, the concept of space is one of the most hilarious things because in order for you to conceive it, you have to see it as the reverse of something, which means that it's as if emptiness equals the absence of fullness, right? So it's as if there needs to be some sort of concept, and the hollowness of it, in some sense, becomes the validated counter meaning, right? So emptiness is like because there isn't anything in there, not just because emptiness is a thing, conceivable thing on its own, right? So in regards to time and space, now if I go into space, the trio I have presented here, and think about the context. So whatever you hear in your life, wherever you are listening, always find a context to it, or it's going to go, or your memory has no way of relating it to your view. I personally find, I mean, people of course are different. I'm one of 8 billion, but the way I see it is that there's a micro story to me, and there's a macro story in regards to how the inner realms is divided. In the micro story, free will is the captain. In the macro story, the will of the universe and the forces of nature is the captain, right? So it's as if like, how would I say it? Um, um, in front of your eyes, you're a creation. Behind your eyes, you're a creator. Do you see? Like there are levels. There's levels to self that animate, and it depends on the human attention. But anyways, for space, that means we looking at the meaning of life and being like, all right, there's creatures and there's so much space, and it's as if there's so many galaxies and universes, but the human being gets to live 100 years. It's as if who was this giant world made for? Right? So when we wonder about space, one category would be the notion of the infinite. One of the most beautiful concepts in mathematics, I think, is infinity plus one. Yeah, because it's still infinity, which means endlessness. So that means any sort of human conscious psychological game, if it chooses to function as an individual, will meet infinity. The destiny of the individual is to become infinite. Okay. That means that is what happens when you're a temporary animal. It's as if everybody's walking. You know what it is? It's as if we are walking on a bridge, as if Earth is a bridge, right? Imagine Earth is a bridge between dimensions, and every being is just walking, right? Now, if you stop walking, you remain on the bridge. If you keep going, now let me tell you what I mean by this notion, right? So you see, man has to first notice the variables in place, then wonder about their relationships. So what I'm trying to say is that it's as if when we look at 8 billion creatures on a sphere in the middle of nowhere, uh, and they've recently found the ability to speak and communicate, it's as if the only option is to play the finite game with an infinite attitude. Right? It's as if what is the purpose of the human species? It is eternal, or I should say, it is immortal survival, you know, or eternal conscious continuity. That means there may even come a time that if the species makes too many unnatural decisions, right, human beings might be like, why am I in a biological body? I'll just go into a technological body. And then there's going to be maybe some subtler ways where consciousness is seen as a level that we tap into, right? So it's as if the biological body is just becoming an antenna capable of, let's say, retaining consciousness that could be non-local. That means not in the room, right? Like a remote control car, in other words, right? So it's as if it doesn't matter if like can that same remote work with a different car? Imagine a robot body instead of like, you know, a biological body. So, anyways, a notion of the infinite, and how it stands here. It's as if it's like if you get bored of the notion of right and wrong, I'm telling you, the infinite is the only thing. Like really, in this life, we make the search for truth so complex, and of course, we have the right to do so. It's part of our freedom. But I'm saying, like, when you really look at it, if you were to look at the edges of the fields of possibility, it's literally like you can see it as a square. Do you know? And each corner is a suggestion of this first primary reality put into place. So what that means is, think of it this way: that I'm going to try to give examples of types of human beings. So imagine there's a human being on this planet, and when they ask this human being, "What do you see?" This human being says, "I see primarily emptiness, and then I see something in it, and I see that, or I see emptiness, let's say, as the primary context, right? It's as if everything is meaningless, even meaning is meaningless when there was nothing here, right? So that's the value of emptiness. Now, this emptiness is an attitude, but now let's say you are, I playfully call it in the talks, the singularians. The singularians are those who are just their worldview is singular. That means imagine you ask another type of person, what's the meaning of this? And the person's like, it has no meaning. And then you're like, why? Because it's empty. And the person's like, no, because it's all one event, one moment. It's as if we are like cells inside a biological organism the size of the edge of the cosmos, and or maybe more or whatever, So it's like so it's like that's one attitude, right? So there was like you saw emptiness, you were a voidist, and now imagine you see a singular, that you're a singularian. Now let's say you're a dualitarian. That means you look at everything in reality, and you say even the concept of zero and one, even the concept of how there's something and then it could have relationship with other forms. It's like there's multiple. So the moment you have duality, you pretty much uh, can access infinity by multiplying it by itself, right? So what I mean by this is that it's like the dualities become endless, and it's as if you could see a universe that is infinitely, uh, like an infinite, endless chaos and order pattern, just echoing, or going forward. Excuse me. I had to check something about the stream, guys. So let me see how I can move past this part. Quick recap. I'm looking at the purpose of life. I'm wondering about space. I'm looking at space. I'm like, all right, it's infinite. That's one factor. Then what else do I know about space? It's mysterious. So it's unknown. And then what else do we know about space? Intelligence exists in it, right? So intelligence and space they have a close meaning, but the materialistic framework never fathoms that. Right. So it's as if, what if space can be intelligent? It's like you never see a spiritual person being like, my soul's in my body. It's as if imagine the spiritual person says, my soul's in space, bro. I've incarnated as space. You know. So what I'm saying is that space could be intelligent, and it could suggest fields of intelligence, and it could suggest that our individuality is just uh, the the sphere of limited receptivity. It's as if because we can't see everything, we are left in having an individual relationship with it, right? So in some sense, it's like there's limitations to biological perception, and now imagine based on the limitations of the biological perception, there's different variations of patterns that arise, right? So let me see how else I could say it. In our outer life, pretty much health is the main game. When we look at the inner life seems to only exist for directing. I'm not joking. Like the purpose of the free will is to activate or be in some presence of an action. It's as if why do we even have the concept of boredom, right? It's as if the orientation of our intelligence is through acting, or activating. So it could be that um, we look at life, we look at all the known variables, we look at time and space, and we see time and space can give so many different purposes, right? To what life has to be. But ultimately, after the game of the known variables, we come to the unknown. Now, okay, so I've written here if the unknown is endless, so we looked at our own stories of life, we saw how limited they were in regards to the macro context of everything. And so we're like, okay, what do we do with this endless unknown? So that would suggest that the known becomes temporary. And you know what it is? It's as if, like, when you look at a human being live, it's as if they're a film, they're a character in a film, but how that human being is living is like photographs in various moments to themselves, right? Because what is a value system, right? A value system is how you, as an originally as an unknown attention, are just having a relationship with the world, right? That's all. Like that's really where spirituality is. It takes people. It takes people to experiential sensitivity of how existence is being, the nature of being. It could even be concluded that I've written here. It's a conscious cycle of an attributeless excuse me. It's a cycle. It's a conscious cycle of an attributeless attention witnessing endless change between the known and the unknown. So from duality, either we make the duality infinite. I mean, think about it. Everything's like the tragedy of man's mind is literally just how he's infinitely considering the void, the singular, and the dual. Sometimes I wonder why is there so many religious people on the planet? I wonder about that. And then I realize it's because the notion of revelation, it's as if it was an introduction from the unknown. That means we value what comes from the unknown more than what comes from the known. This is why art surpasses, memory or irrationality and logic just based on how the past had a value system. Really, the way I look at things, is that knowledge is a privilege of a stable enough external environment. It's as if we have never been objects and subjects only. It's as if but we have been using objects and subjects simultaneously. It's as if we are the users of the mind and the body, right? I remember I had a very profound moment. This was weeks ago before the new year. And I was just sitting in a car, I had an iced cappuccino with me that was like from Tim Hortons. And I had a cigarette at the time in my hand. And so I'm just there observing the moment. And then I was like, okay, why is there anything happening at all? And how is there intelligence just here? It's as if we take it for granted, but the most fundamental, the most essential position in life is watchfulness. It's literally realizing the mind is a watcher. The mind is watching itself. As certain scholars have said, it's as if you become aware that you are aware. That is the beginning of the mind coming to the present to begin now advancing civilization. When I think about the outer realms, I'm like, okay, what can 8 billion creatures do on a rock in the middle of nowhere? You know, they can either just live like how animals live in the forest, that means some animals they work together in groups, but most animals are just like in their own world, right? So we could, even though we have civilization and everything, we could choose to have a sort of animalistic outlook for the future and just set the standard to animalism. That means if the species is going to make mistakes in the future, might as well just earlier be like, okay, we're going to end up being savage animals because we didn't have the ability to unite and organize and see where that would take us, right? So one option is accept the loss, or the other attitude is wonder about reality as a sort of puzzle, right? It's as if you thought about the past, the present, now the future is left, right? So really, the work of the human being is to build the future in the present and use the past if necessary. That means from the unknown, it's as if, you know what it is? It's like our species got a bit of knowledge and it suddenly turned that knowledge into mud and like covered its eyes or something like a savage, you know we turned knowledge into boxes and it's so comfortable living in a you know having a box over your head. You don't have to confront anything beyond your perception, right? So reality is really, its meaning is shifting. We're not here to just be safe and known. We're here to, in some sense, be adventurers on a massive scale and put for the highest ideal, at least the attempt to find the solution. It's as if sometimes, think of it this way. Imagine someone doesn't know how to solve a problem, so they could still attempt to solve the problem, but they got to first solve how can they know to solve the problem. Do you know? You can always take a step back and then re-enter a sort of, let's say, conceptual design or structure or perspective. Oh, and in the subtitle, I've written beyond expectations and states conceivable. That's really, again, the relationship between the present and the future. And I've written here our most conscious response to the unknown is our advancement. Back to a point I made earlier, the future of civilization is information storage management. So we either advance the inner life of the human being, either advance the outer life, or combine them to advance in some sense uh, uh, both and beyond, right? That means it's as if we like think of it as if there was a new educational system in the future, one class would just be to focus on how to handle your memories, or how what are all the different approaches that a person can have a relationship with their memory, right? Some people believe they are their memories, but it's obvious that they know that they have stepped beyond that memory into the present, which is the future of that memory, right? So it's as if right now, as I'm giving this talk, it's as if every word I say becomes a memory for my future self, which is going to say the next word. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like a relationship of every moment having its own significance. Anyways, okay. Information storage management. I've written here the right wrong system works, but is not enough. And then this leads us to the question, what sort of collective human directing system can there be beyond right and wrong? This is really the great puzzle of 2022 and beyond. These objects that became subjects to themselves, and now these subjects that are moving objects as a sort of free will of an attention are now wondering, okay, beyond a moment being right and wrong, could it be that this right and wrong has just been an artificial replacement for an actual state of mind where everything is really unknown? That means it's as if we are telling our own story in the void. And so the mysteries, this is why to me mysticism is like the ultimate intellectual position. Why? Because it's as if the unknown has always been here, you know? And a genius of Carl Jung was that he said in the collective unconscious there's archetypes. That means right now as I'm speaking, there is so many ways an attention to a sort of inner image can suddenly spectrumize, you know? That means it's like our inner life is fascinating. People think that it's as if people usually wait for the outer realms to give them permission in the inner realms. It should be the opposite, you know, or it should be a balanced relationship, right? That means I've had moments where I've just like, usually I do this, that I just lie down and for a second I don't decide to move until I have fathomed to the furthest I can what decision is most valuable. And I'm telling you, it's remarkable that when the person actually learns to watch their mind, how much more additional layers of information they can access. Usually people who notice their inner realms, they react to it, they get identified by it, and then that leads to mental disturbances. That leads to psychological turbulence. Right. But if a person was to properly pilot their intelligence in this realm, and when I say intelligence, of course, there's everybody has their own unique journey of memory, you know, journey of, through their own memories. But I'm telling you, it's as if like a simplicity and honesty and a preferencelessness to just be there and watch, right? It's as if like a non-physical event, numenology or phenomenology is just, I can't say phenomenology when it's non-physical, like a non-physical event is happening. And when the person does not search or does not react to a desire, they just notice how they're being. And being is so simple. and it leads to the true essence of the unknown that there has been just too many mystics talking about it in history. You know, the poet Rumi says this, the Sufi mystic poet, he says, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. And what is the concept of God? The concept of God is, in some sense, a singular, ultimate, intelligent factor. You know, it's literally the greatest archetype that an individual can fathom, right? That means you look at all the levels of life. Let's say you remember as a kid you saw like an anthill. Now you can visualize, even though ants don't have personalities that are like humans. But imagine if in the ants had suddenly personalities, and you can suddenly see this sort of fractal infinitude of an authorization for creative expression. It's as if, like, if reality was a simulation and we were like, what is this simulation doing? This simulation is animating. And this animation is so mysterious that the only transcendental reason for it is as if the ancient yogis were like, it's all the game of the gods, right? It's as if we think that we are on the main stage, but we're actually, like, according to the ancient mystics, they saw us as like at the bottom of a mountain of a transcendental uh, truth beyond realities, right? And in Vedanta, there's the concept of seven lokas, the seven it's as if seven lower worlds and seven upper worlds. The seven upper worlds, it's like the final one is like Brahma Loka, which means it's like when the person realizes that attention and being simultaneously energy is also simultaneously being all the potential of that. In some sense, the person it's very strange. It's as if, like, you were a self and you acknowledged so let's say you're a self and you acknowledge that in the world. Now you have become the world and you're acknowledging the world as the world, right? So first you were a self, you acknowledge yourself, then you acknowledge, let's say okay, first, okay, oh my god, the geometry of this. I'm saying you're a self, then the attention realize, okay, I'm part of a cosmic event, so you become a world. And then the world is like, oh my God, I'm the all the potentials of this world. That means it's as if, like, emptiness is the permission for everything to exist, right? So it's as if, like, the world recognizes it can be, let's say, any world. And then beyond that notion, right, is either left as a revelation for the individual psyche, or it is a remembrance. That means the way out of the simulation is to remember beyond the self that was lost in the simulation. You know? So you see, it's all about the behavior of 8 billion creatures, and how they respond to their own value systems of both their inner life and outer life, right? In the outer life, someone can act like a very good person, but then in their inner life, they can have rough thoughts on reality, right? Or someone can act very rough in the outer realms, right? Very tough and intense, but suddenly in their inner life, it's as if they are a stranger to their own action, right? So it's as if there is so many ways the psychology can move, and ultimately the value of so think of it as if the most conscious decision would be everything that is accessible in the moment to you, everything. That means an observation of all physical phenomena and all the ways it can be interpreted, and then an observation of all your inner phenomena. The mind is actually a space. And you know how I can tell you it's a space? Or how it's like it's as if it's like an energy sphere. Okay, it's as if right now, as I'm talking, what is the brain doing? What is the heart doing? It's like pulsating, right? The brain is giving off waves. When you sleep, you go, for example, into REM sleep and whatnot, right? So the brain it's like the whole purpose of biology is to express itself. And now, once this expression has become conscious, that has been defined as survival, right? But survival of the fittest is just a strategy for those who, in some sense, cannot wonder about what else are we beyond the physical entity, right?
That means this is the hilarious thing in life, that we are objects, but subjects are not objects. Yet when you wonder about who a person is, they're a subject. Ultimately, I think it's just an unknown moment, realizing that being known is part of its domain. Just like how you move your, let's say, you move your hand in the air, it's like an instant, let's say, command in regards to the neurology, right? Like a circuit's lightening up, right? So it's as if that same relationship can happen in the inner realms, right? I am telling you, it's as if the ancients would say the mind is a lousy master but a great servant. How you serve your excuse me, how you serve your mind is by becoming its student, right? That means as if the person has to realize either in this life the responsibility of our psychology is shouldered by us, piloted by us, or in some sense the outer realms will intervene. So I'm pretty much saying, like, if human beings every day they woke up, these 8 billion creatures on Earth, and they wondered about what is the most advanced, possible, fathomable vision of the world. I am telling you, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. When you want to march into the unknown with all that the known has led to, you know what it is? People don't treat the psychology, I think, as sometimes I think with the intensity that I treat it. To me, it's a battlefield. This notion of teachers, students, right? It's like how would I tell you? It's as if like 8 billion eyes staring at change and wondering why they can consciously interfere with that change. And let me tell you, the way we've designed Civilization 2.0. Excuse me, Civilization 1.0, the way we have designed civilization, the type of civilization we see right now, is that it is making the person ignorant of their inner life. So in the outer life, um, their attention is chained to repetition, right? That means it's as if art is like a rebellion against the choking hands of the past's authority, you know. There's so many ways to look at how a species can behave that it's as if how can you be limited to one, right? It's as if we moved beyond the void, we moved beyond the singular, and now we're in the dual. And now the one thing I would personally say, if I was to relate it to Civilization 2.0, in 3,600 years from now, around that time, I see that we would go beyond mindhood. I would see literally we have experienced enough physical exploration of the realm that we will just transition into collective fields of being. You see, it's as if the higher dimensions are space, the lower dimensions are matter. Do you know? And the more you realize you are space, and what is in some sense the idea of love that religion talks about. Do you know? It is acceptance of the space of being, regardless of what it is. It is the submission of the conditional mind into the presence of the unconditional, which means the end of individualism. You see, it's hilarious. Uh, we have to build an advanced civilization while defending the gentle human mind from the savageness of ideological possession. I've written here a multidimensional acknowledgement of the individual is required before the greater evolution of the psyche becomes accessible, and effort of an advanced civilization is inevitable. That means whether my voice reaches the ears of the species, eventually people will realize the greatest game to play on Earth is is to see what an advanced civilization would look like. You know, or as this fictional character in my favorite show, favorite story of all time, I would say one of the favorite stories of all time for me, Shingeki no Kyojin, where there's this character commander, Erwin Smith, where he says the meaning is of life is to live for those who will find the meaning one day, something in those lines. That's it. We just have to build with the intent that the advanced civilization is already waiting. That means it's not even a matter of belief. It's just the actualization of the potential of how much more the inner life saw than the outer life and acted upon. And really, when it comes to existence, again, we get to the unknown. We get to the unknown, where no paper, no pen can help anymore. Ultimately, it's just an expressive effort that can be directed. The free will exists to control. The body exists to be maintained. The world exists to be engaged. The mind exists to, in some sense, move the body in response to the vastness of the landscape. And it's as if we did not, if we weren't on the known side of the coin, I mean, what would the other point be? We're unknown beings looking for knowledge, do you know? Or we're known beings looking for the unknown. These are the two games possible in reality. And I would say the best relationship to have with the unknown. So this is like after a person, let's say they've gone through, um, they've entertained various intellectual narratives on how there's so many different value systems to create for a temporary animal. But what if we consider for a second, what would an eternal perspective look like? Right? What would the flip side, like the other side of the pancake of temporary beings in an eternal space be like? Right? It would be like an eternal being in temporary space. You know, there was a time where I thought divinity was outside of my eyes. It's really just presence. You know, if you become content with your presence and you just wonder about yourself as if, like, imagine if an alien landed on Earth, people would be like, yo, we gotta meet this alien, we gotta see, its secrets or whatever. Now imagine the aliens like, hey, you guys don't know even what the mind is. Look at yourself. You'll get the same reaction. You know? It's as if the aliens are like, you guys want to know what we are. You don't even know what you are, human being. Oh man. Honestly, if you think about like Fermi's paradox, or you just think about how many different galaxies there are, how many different planets there could potentially be there, right? There's definitely other beings out there, right? But it's as if our relationship with them really is based on our relationship with ourself that creates the, primary value structure to even engage them, right? It's as if the human being is seen as a multidimensional entity, There is no one truth, right? Or in some sense, that one truth, even if there is, would be similar to, like, light going into white light on one side of the prism, and then RG on the other side, right? So it's as if the rainbow is all just one light, right? The mind of man is honestly strange. It's as if it's like an animal, and the animal's like, what do I do with this? And then there's the human civility, and you're like, what do I do with this? And then there's even for the mystical context, there's a soul, and you're like, can I even do anything about the soul? And ultimately, it's just left to be voluntary and involuntary. If you bring your attention in the moment into a voluntary domain, you can define it and have access to, let's say, the inner realms and what they provide, right? Or a person can just choose to live unconsciously. The more unconsciously a person lives, the more the environment is being their mind. The more consciously a person lives, they realize um, the chess piece that their free will is, their conscious free will is in the environment. Another way of saying is that we are intelligent agents. That means we are like, it's as if the biological pattern had an urge to manage itself. Really, evolution is another way of saying that a creature separated itself from Earth, and then separated itself so much that it could name itself and begin acting upon itself. It's as if the purpose of the body is to react to change. There's so many angles to look at a certain moment. I'm telling you, um, the species doesn't know anything. You know, it knows some things, right? It knows patterns from the past, but the future it requires to be designed. And if you are to design the future, you must be living there internally, right? You must see the possibility. This is why uh, uh, hope, having hope for a better future is just the greatest gift we can give the future. It's presence. It's efficient presence. So, anyways, to me, reality is unknown. We organize the species by saying, hey guys, we need a great story. That great story is to advance civilization. How we do it is, in some sense, becoming treasure revealers and explorers of reality and psychological domains, and then mapping everything out. So it's as if trying to see all the potential dimensions to reality and then connecting them or compiling them. It's as if why consciousness? So there can be something there. We are nature's way. Uh, it's as if individual human life is the greatest experience a universe can have. It's like we're individuals looking at the universe. We're like, yeah, universal consciousness, and then the universe is looking at individuals and it's like, yeah, individual consciousness, an ability for the collective to update, you know. Anyways, guys, march into the unknown gracefully and how you pilot your attention, whether it's towards the void, towards the singular, dual, or infinite. Regardless of how you wear the ring of the absent heaven, your moment is your greatest teacher and has been there with you from the beginning. The truths that we seek, even if they're outside of us, like the brain's experience is internal, so they're all within, right? To understand what kind of intelligence we are and in what kind of intelligent universe we are and how that intelligence is even accessible or not accessible. It's as if the world is waiting for, you know, greater explorations of the psyche, you know. In the inner realms, I usually say in my vision of civilization 2.0 that you advance communication. In the outer realms, you advance civilization. In the outer realms, trying to stay human and be human is the most important thing, right? And in the inner realms, I will tell you, right, to remember that there is a human position, and then also to remember that that human position has been being watched from the beginning. It's as if your presence is the liberation of your personality from um, how it expects duality to be an outcome or destiny for it. It's as if the design of the sense of self suggests its destiny from the beginning, also, right? I remember when I was young, my grandfather from the mother's side, one day he came to me and my brother and he's like, whatever you guys do in this life, look for the greatest. And so, I don't know, just I think I subconsciously respected my grandfather, so I listened indirectly, you know. But the notion was that now I'm wondering what is the greatest that the species deserves. That means like me as a person, I'm just around for let's say 100 years. You know, after that, what happens, right? It's as if we want our efforts to extend beyond what we only saw. So, which means again an incredible management of all the information out there in the world for the future. Just like how bees, let's say, excuse me, they build like a honeycomb or something. Like it's as if like uh, just like insect level hexagonal architects. Just like how bees, in honor of the continuity of their whole, let's say, uh, group, build something, it's like we must do the same, but instead of pollen, we're looking for uh, all the fathomable ways that the human construct can have a relationship with the unknown. And that is really the great work of the species. To no longer stare at the mind as a question mark, but to utilize it in accordance to the advancement of all. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and I hope this episode was helpful. And much blessings and namaste.